Welcome to the second part of my interview with Len Berry. This interview is part of our new series, Legends of Service Research. If you missed the first part, you will find it in the upper right corner. So without further ado, let's continue the conversation with Len. Maybe let's talk again more broader about the service field, because there's an interesting article in Journal of Retailing that you wrote 1993 together with Parsu. And there was the question what it needs to build an own academic field. And when I read over all of these articles, you see this kind of urge in the 90s, let's say, something around that time. I wonder, now that we are a little bit established, this is also when SERVSIG was started and was founded, 1993, you made some assumption what is needed for the field. Now, these are assumptions this multiple years ago. But what do you say? Are we now an own academic field?
In 1993, when we wrote the history paper, which Parsu and I wrote, it was really a hard paper to write. I never before, and I don't think ever will again, because it was so hard, have I written a historical paper, a history paper. So I have great respect for the academic profession of history, because that was my one and only try. Parsu would feel the same. It was hard, but we were very proud of that article. We wanted to chronicle how this field started, and so in that article that you mentioned, we talked about the role that the AMA played, MSI played, and ASU played. And we also talked about a number of the key players from France, from the Nordic school, the American academics that got involved. We talked about many of them. We talked about some of the business people that were involved. Lynn Shostak, I mentioned. Ruth Bolton was a great contributor to the services field we know her now as an academic, but at the time she was with GTE. She was an executive in research, Ruth Bolton, and she was a pivotal player. And so we wrote about the people, and we wrote about the institutions that helped start the field. What it's become has been the dream upon dreams. I mean, it's bursting at the seams, and it's global. And there's so many young scholars that are doing such great work. It's so exciting for me as one of the elders. Maybe that's the best way to put it. One of the elders.
Yeah.
It's so exciting for me, Werner, to see all the young, smart, bright people doing such important work in all kinds of service fields.
When you look on this inheritance of service, one thing is undeniable: service is on the rise. A lot of people love to talk about service. Service became so important. Regardless if you know our community or not, people are aware of that term and know it matters. It might be also because of internet service. It might be that people understand the economics of services. So all of these things are there. Do you see a threat, coming a little bit back to my initial question, that other disciplines, other people hijacking our topic? So how do you see the threat from that side, being too successful and picked apart?
Yes, excellent question. I'm not concerned.
Yeah.
I'm not concerned. I'm not concerned for a couple of reasons. One, I'm not concerned because our services field is so big, it's so global, and it's so interdisciplinary already. You look at some of the rising stars in services, people I admire so much. You look at someone like Leah Patricio, works a lot with Ray Fisk. I've gotten to know her. She's so capable. She has an engineering and design background, but she's into services now. And I think the future of services is we need to work on bigger and bigger problems that are impacting society. We need to help society resolve those problems. We have so much expertise in services to do that. But to do that, we need interdisciplinary muscle. We need to be working with psychologists and sociologists and designers and economists and architects and public health people and physicians. So I think services, more than perhaps any other part of a business discipline, is by its nature inherently interdisciplinary.
So, Len, it would be interesting to know the person behind this unbelievable researches. So I have prepared some short questions, and I asked you to bring a whiteboard and a pen. So you have that ready?
I do.
Oh, wonderful. Great. So let's do this and see what your answers to these things. So my first question is, think far, far back. What was a job that you want to have as a child? What was your dream job that you were thinking about? That is what I want to become. What was it? Oh, a rock and roll singer. And why didn't that work out? So how long did you hold on that?
I can't sing at all.
Okay.
But I can't sing at all, but I was always captivated by people being on a stage and enthralling the audience and being able to do that. And I thought, what a cool career that would be if I could be a rock and roll star and be famous and get rich and have all kinds of women wanting to meet me backstage. And anyway, so yeah, but that's as far as it went.
That's a very fair and very honest answer. So now an easier one. What is your favorite dish?
My favorite dish is, let's see, I have a lot of favorite dishes. You
need to choose one. Shrimp. Wow. I'm on your side. Any special type of shrimp? How you do that?
Oh, all kinds of shrimp. I try to be a good boy and stay away from fried shrimp, but anything else usually works.
Those are the best.
I love shellfish in general. Yeah.
When there's one word that your friends would use to describe you, what would be this word? Quiet.
Yes, and so I have to explain that because and there's some other words too, but that's a question where you don't want to use a word that looks like you're telling a tall tale about yourself or patting yourself on the back. So I didn't want to do that. So I'm hoping some people might use a nice word about me, but when people first meet me, sometimes they'll see me as fairly quiet. I'm soft-spoken, and I believe I'm a good listener, and I enjoy listening and learning from other people, and so conversations often start with soft-spoken Len and a lot of listening rather than talking. And that has posed some interesting challenges when people, early on when I was doing a lot of public speaking, and people would meet me for the first time. This is before we had, FaceTime or we had Zoom and all of that. On the phone or even in person, and they'd meet me and they were thinking about hiring me to speak at their big conference, and they'd start to think, and they'd tell me later this, they'd start thinking, oh my gosh, this guy's pretty quiet and soft-spoken. I wonder how good a speaker he is. But when I get behind a microphone, I become a different person. So I'd tell them that. But
what is your favorite sports club? As a European, I would say soccer club, but it can be any other sports. Do you have a favorite team?
yes.
Wonderful. We need to know. Texas A&M. Okay, that was a politically correct answer.
Oh, yes, but also a true answer because my wife and I, bless her heart, she's as big a sports fan as me, and we go to all of the Aggie big sports events, the Texas A&M Aggies, football. I'm hoping we'll have football this year. I don't know because of COVID. The basketball, the baseball, and sometimes there's softball. And we love women's basketball, not just men's basketball. So we go to all of those games. So we're big college sports fans. So we like to root for the home team, and I'm just hoping that the pandemic will allow college sports to resume at some point. Yeah, because we miss it. We miss it.
I understand. So now comes my last and tough question, unfortunately. You have an Hirsch index of over 100, I checked today. So that means you have a lot of papers. Which publication pops in your mind when I ask you, what is your personal favorite paper?
I'm writing it.
Yes, it's okay.
It just takes a while.
Can also write citation. It's okay. You don't need to write the complete title, depending on how long it is. Okay, kindness and cancer care. Why did that? What are the strongest argument for that?
But I thought of that paper, Werner, because it really captured the essence of what we need more of when cancer strikes a family.
I understand.
And that is kindness, true kindness. Cancer care is about more than just the science. It's also about holding people's hand and helping them get through this horrific and scary experience. And what we did in this paper is we broke down kindness into 6 different types of kindness. You asked me why I picked that. So we got the reviews back. And the first reviewer starts out, we certainly don't need a paper on kindness. We doctors, and in medical journals, all the reviewers are physicians. We doctors, we know about kindness. We don't need a paper on kindness. Come on now, give me a break. That's how the review starts. Oh my gosh. But then the review goes on and says, but I started reading the paper and it gets more and more interesting because they keep talking about different kinds of kindness, and I've never really thought about it that way. Like we talk about the kindness of timeliness in cancer care. Making people wait 2 weeks after a diagnosis of cancer to actually see an oncologist in order to get your treatment planning started. That's 2 weeks of suffering. That's unkind. And so that's one of the dimensions of kindness. One of the 6 dimensions we write about is the timeliness of cancer care. And so to see that review start with, there's no way I'm going to accept this paper, to, I think we need to publish this paper, or whatever the reviewer said. So yeah, that's one of my favorites.
What fascinates you so much about the healthcare industry that you are, looks like, at least, devoting all your time now in this area?
So what happened is I had a sabbatical leave coming up in, it was going to be in the academic year 2001, 2002. And I thought long and hard about what to do in that sabbatical. It's such a wonderful opportunity we get in academia, every once in a while to find a new mountain to climb. And I thought about my background as a career services researcher, and I had worked strictly in the commercial sector.
Yeah.
And I realized that there was a gap in my background, and that's one of our biggest services of them all, which is healthcare. And I think that's what a sabbatical should be, is to fill a gap in your background, to challenge yourself, to get out of your comfort zone. And so I decided I needed to learn about healthcare. I knew very little about it other than having been a patient from time to time, but had never studied it. And so I decided to do my sabbatical in healthcare, and I decided, why not try to study at one of the best? And so I contacted the Mayo Clinic, one of the most prestigious healthcare clinics in the entire world, as you know. And that was not easy to be accepted to study at the Mayo Clinic the way I wanted to study it, which was to be there for almost a full year and to have full access for interviews, for observations.
How did the other doctors, the other professors think about a guy who comes from management or from a retail school to go to a clinical or to a hospital and doing
I was concerned about that because, we in society, we sort of put doctors on a pedestal, as I always had. And so I'm going there as a non-doctor to study with doctors and to study about doctors and the work that they do and to watch them actually do the work. I did hundreds and hundreds as part of that research of in hospital room, in examination room observations. I was a fly on the wall, hundreds of them. I went into the operating room many times to watch surgeries. So I was surprised at how welcome, once Mayo Clinic accepted me, and I went through a lot of due diligence. I had to fly to Rochester, Minnesota, their headquarters, 3 different times. And I was probably interviewed by at least 50 people, 50, before they said yes. It's a very conservative institution. But once they said yes, they were great to me and gave me full access. And the doctors, it turns out, not all of them, everybody was nice, but many of the doctors really were genuinely interested in meeting me, in working with me, in helping me, and in learning from me, because it turns out I knew a lot of stuff about business and service and customer behavior and so forth that they hadn't been trained in. And so I found myself having my own brain picked much more than I expected. I was there to pick their brains, but it was mutual. And it turns out that I've made many lifelong friends at the Mayo Clinic. I visit regularly to the Mayo Clinic. I go back at least once a year, see my friends. I have a lot of contact with the Mayo Clinic, and it's been a fantastic relationship for me. And that was my beginning in healthcare. And what happened to me at studying the Mayo Clinic, and I'll finish this quickly. What happened to me is I was totally fascinated.
Okay. What fascinates you?
I was fascinated because healthcare service was different in kind, not just degree, from other services that I'd studied my entire career.
Okay.
I was fascinated with this new, complex, difficult, challenging, scary service called healthcare. And I was learning about all these problems in healthcare. all of these issues and problems and the waste and the costs and the shortages of nurses and physicians and the mistakes and the safety issues I was learning about all of this and so before I left Mayo Clinic to come back to Texas A&M, I decided, this was almost 20 years ago now. I was there in 2001, 2002. I decided I was going to devote the rest of my career to studying healthcare service. I was going to use my background, my career background in service quality, services marketing, service organization management, and I was going to leverage that background and try to help solve some of the problems in healthcare.
Just out of curiosity, and it's, I had always the impression when you look on medical journals, when I look on my medical friends who are publishing, that the publication process in the medical field is significantly faster than in the business area. So the writing must be different. So I don't know, is that also in your area where you look on healthcare and services, or is it only for this kind of clinical trials where they write just the pure facts?
Yes, the timeliness of medical journal publishing is totally different from what we're used to in our journals, Werner. And it's something I had to get used to in both good and bad ways. I've never had an article rejected within 48 hours from a business journal.
Wow.
I have had an article more than once rejected within 48 hours from a medical journal. And it's really quite humiliating when you work so hard on something and to have it turned back so quickly. So it's not all good, but mostly it's good. And it's a matter of necessity. The material that's published in medical journals sometimes is life-saving information. You know, a research study that shows dangerous implications, dangerous side effects for a prescribed medication, for example. It's very important to get that publication out quickly. And so medical journals work with that mentality that much of what they publish has to be put into the record as quickly as possible. And so typically the top medical journals will do internal rejections. Between 50 and 70% of all submissions will be rejected within a week. You have to get used to that. And so when I submit to a medical journal, every email I get for the next 2 weeks, I hold my breath. I do not want to hear from them. Because I don't have to read the email to know what within 2 week decision a medical journal is going to say.
Yes, for the work of 2 years or so.
Yeah, so I don't have to hold my breath. And so what you hope for in a medical journal is that you get through the internal review. And then what's really nice is you really have a good chance at getting published.
Okay.
The other difference in medical journals is they don't go through multiple revisions. You basically get one revision. You get one chance to solve the problems, and that's it.
I understand.
And I appreciate that a lot.
When I look what you're doing in healthcare, it looks like you are more specialized now after some years on cancer research or in the cancer research area, healthcare there. Why is that the field when you observe the scenes and say, you know, here with my knowledge, with my background of service research, I can do the most? Can you a little bit explain?
Yes. So I started my cancer research about 13, 14 years into my research in healthcare. So I had done a number of different healthcare service studies before launching into cancer. And one of those studies was I did another sabbatical, a half-year sabbatical in the state of Wisconsin, where I studied a month apiece at 3 different health organizations, health systems. And in 2 of those health systems, I did deep dives in their cancer programs. And I got inspired by what I saw in dipping my toe into the cancer water. And so when I came back from Wisconsin, I started to think about cancer research. And then a couple of years later, I applied to become a senior fellow at the Institute for Healthcare Improvement, IHI, in Boston. And that's a research fellowship. And so you have to submit a research proposal. And I decided to submit my research proposal on cancer. The non-clinical part of cancer. How do we improve the experience of patients and families from the moment a cancer diagnosis is made all the way through to what happens next? I was accepted. I was accepted and became a senior fellow, and I went to Boston and spent another almost year in Boston studying cancer, and that was the beginning. That was in 2015. I was in Boston. And again, why cancer? Because it's the scariest disease category that there is. It's not necessarily the most lethal. There's some cancers that we have very good survival rates with today, but it's the scariest. And 1.6, 1.7 million people in America get a cancer diagnosis every single year. And we spend somewhere in the neighborhood of $130 billion in America on cancer care every year. And most of all, it's an issue where we've made so much more progress clinically than we have in terms of the service part. And I felt I could help with the service part. I knew healthcare, I knew services, and I was going to learn about cancer. And so I picked cancer. And again, I was just so passionate. I met in my research in Boston at the IHI.
Yeah.
I interviewed so many cancer doctors, and I interviewed so many cancer patients and their families. And it was inspiring to me, their bravery. And I asked myself, would I be as brave if I or someone I loved was going through this? Would I be as strong? And I just felt, I have the background where I can help improve the patient experience. I'm going to do that. And I've been at it now for 5 years.
Okay. Thank you very much for sharing this. Len, I enjoyed this conversation a lot. It was so nice to get a little bit background information from you, to get to know you as a person significantly better. Thank you very much for the time that you invested here and all what you have done for our community. Our community would be not like it is today without your work, with your baseline work for all of this. Thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me. And this was a lot of fun for me to do. And it brought me back down memory lane. And that was fun.
That can happen with a format like this, Chia. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye now.
Bye. So thank you for watching this episode of Legends of Service Research. I hope this new format is helpful for you and you learned something for your own academic career. Let us know in the comments what you think about this new series, and if you haven't done already, please subscribe to our channel. We depend on people like you to make this format even better. Till then, see you in the next video. Bye bye.